Hello, my name's Imtaz Khalik. I'm the peer tutor lead at the Recovery College in Tower Hamlets. And so what we're doing now is we would really love to have you here in the offices and do our courses as we normally do. But we're doing them in this way where we're having a discussion about the areas, and so we can sort of interact with you. And we'll probably be doing this for the next few months. And we would really love for you to interact with us in whichever way you feel comfortable and which is right for you.
Hi, my name's Siobhan and I'm one of the OTs here at the Recovery College. And what we're going to be doing over the next few months is we're going to actually bring our courses to you via video. This first course we're going to be looking at routine, and that's obviously, as everything's changed, so all our routines are completely different now that we're in the new normal, as the phrase has been coined. Today we're going to be exchanging some ideas. Myself and Imtaz are going to be talking about how we've adapted to this new normal, what sort of routines we've employed to help us to sort of cope with the changes, and we're hoping to find out how you're managing, and if you'd like to contribute, what type of things you're doing that helps you to structure your day, or even if you're finding things quite difficult and feel that you'd like to have some different ideas about how to move through this new normal. So this is the first of the courses that we're going to be doing, and we'd really also like to hear about anything else that you think would be a good idea for us to deliver via this medium. And we hope to hear from you, and I hope you enjoy today's course.
Okay, so we're both sat here, me and Siobhan. I'm the peer tutor lead of the Recovery College, and we're going to go through looking at our well-being and what we're doing right now during lockdown and the COVID-19 and everything. So, and a good way to sort of look at well-being, there's the 5 ways of well-being called CLANG. And so C stands for connection and what we do for connection, and then L for learning, what we do for learning, and then A for action, what we do to keep fit and keep moving, and then N for noticing, how we sort of go about life and noticing things around us, and then the last one for well-being is the giving, how we give, or however we are in the world, that it gives you a sense of well-being by actually giving out to other people. So we're just going to go through that together and have a conversation.
Yes, that's right. And what we're going to do as well, we're going to sort of use that concept or that idea to talk about routine. And routine can be quite varied. We're going to actually have a little conversation between ourselves using those terms that Imtaz just discussed, and to relate them to how we're coping within this COVID crisis, and to how that we are using those ideas to help structure our week or our day, and think about them in a meaningful way, that we can sort of understand how we're managing our time and structuring our routine. And just as we're going through this, obviously we have the capacity to get up and go to work. So if some of the things that we say seem a little bit like, oh, that's quite difficult for you to do, don't worry, be quite compassionate with yourself. We're going to be looking for some of your ideas and some feedback from yourself at the end of the video. So make some notes if anything is meaningful to you, or even if you get a bit frustrated by some of the things that we say. It's quite good that we can have a bit of a dialogue to see how we can, think of other ways of supporting each other to be happy and self-compassionate and find some sort of meaning in our day.
Okay, so going back to the CLANG, so what do you do for connection?
Yes, now connections was a really big thing, because as soon as those instructions were announced that we couldn't see people, and you could only go out but you couldn't see your relations or people who weren't in your house, did actually bring up quite a lot of anxiety for me. I was very worried about other people, my mum who's older, My sister's actually pregnant as well. So we were very quick to make sure we could use the social media app WhatsApp, so we could have like a family discussion at least once a week, and that was quite reassuring that everybody could see each other's face. The downside that people did keep talking over each other, so we've kind of eased off that a little bit, because you know, it was almost like a checking in, just to sort of see if everyone was okay. And I think, you know, if people have access to that, or even just phoning up a friend just to check in, see if people are okay, that was quite reassuring to myself. So it has a very, very reciprocal. That was important. How about yourself?
Yeah, so similar, sort of using WhatsApp, but I think mostly sort of staying within the family, calling other family members and making sure that they were okay, and my parents, and the social distancing and that sort of thing. And then also family meals just became much more important, to have the meals where you're sort of talking to each other and face to face, and just connecting in a little bit more deeply. And I think that's what a lot of people have said, that before they used to ask each other, how are you? They just weren't expecting a longer reply, but now you're actually wanting to know how someone is in your life, you know, and valuing relationships a lot more. So I think that's a good thing, that you know, in schools where reading, writing and arithmetic is the most important thing, but now, you know, the 3 R's are reflection, relationships and resilience. So it's that sort of really and knowing that the resilience is the thing that's going to keep you going, and the relationships.
It's interesting that's actually come out at a time where we have had less distractions. You can't go to the shop, you can't go to the pub, you can't. So it's funny that we've kind of, I mean, it depends whether we'll miss those things. I mean, they are good social things, but you, I guess what you're talking about is that slower, more intimate relationship. And I think the resilience itself actually comes out of the mutual support. It's being there for each other, and knowing that someone's got your back, and they're going to listen to you, or they're actually, as you said, interested in how you do actually feel. It's not just a passing comment. Let us know if you've experienced that yourself. Actually, that's quite, you know, it can be quite difficult if you're living by yourself. And I think that lack of contact is something we've all been quite aware of at the college. So if there's anything we can do to kind of facilitate that a bit more, please.
Because that was a huge thing, that in the Recovery College we're all about relationships. So it's just how do we maintain that relationship now we're socially distanced. So I think we need to sort of continue the co-production and work together, and get to a place where you feel comfortable, that we're still connecting in that way.
And learning is the next one. What are you doing for learning?
Yeah, well, for years I've been collecting loads and loads of books and not reading them. So I did have a clear out of loads of books, but I'm still left with hundreds of them. So I've just sort of been starting to read them, you know, read books rather than look at them. Yeah, it's been a sort of a deeper learning that way, and then also sort of looking at Future Learn. I've always had lots of courses that you can get free on Future Learn. Just taking advantage of the free online learning, learning about stress and workplace and communication and that sort of thing, understanding depression. There's just so many books. And Paul Gilbert, I just really think he's brilliant, and he's come up with lots of resources for people during the crisis as well. He's a psychologist, and he's written 20 odd books about depression and self-compassion, So just use the opportunity to really learn deeper and read his books. Yeah.
Do you think you'd be able to put any of those resources online?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So because he's actually done a whole series of talks as well, so we can link on to those.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's interesting actually. You talk about the learning. I was speaking to one of our students, and I've had a number of my own health problems, and we were saying something that's quite interesting, and I wonder if any of you guys will feel this as well. Is because there's always been this level of uncertainty and not really knowing, how your health will pan out, and now everybody's in the same situation. There's a lot of uncertainty. Will they get unwell? If they do get unwell, how will they get the right treatment? Now these are things that most of us at the Recovery College and our students experience daily. And she was saying that she's actually it's almost as if we've been in training for this. So it's interesting. You say you've got the concentration to learn and read.
Yes.
I've heard lots of people who I don't think there's a boundary between unwell and well. People who you have considered well, celebrities. I can't. There's a few names that I won't sort of go through them all, but they've been talking about even authors and stuff, how they can't read a book, how they can't write. And it's interesting how people whose life trajectory has kind of been reasonably smooth. The objectives that they set themselves, they've actually achieved. And now that something bigger actually happens, they find that they've got this brain fog and they can't think. And it's kind of something that people who find themselves within healthcare systems trying to get the right care have experienced for a long time. And so this environment has been sort of disabling for everybody. So I'm hoping that there's a greater empathy for what it feels like when systems are not really meeting your needs. And that's one of the interesting things that I've been doing with my learning, because that's the sort of area that I'm particularly interested in anyway. A lot of the things that I've been trying to keep on top of is sort of listening into Zoom chats. There's been things from the Hearing Voices network. There's been poetry readings from Drop the Disorder. There has been People's Assembly Against Austerity, having lots of really interesting talks. Mike Lee, the film director, who did I, Daniel Blake. And so I've actually, there's been lots of interesting things coming out, which I'm quite happy to put some links for. The Hearing Voices Network have been doing lots of Zoom things that everyone can get involved with. So it sort of works in two ways. It sort of provides you with some sort of things that can be interesting and allow you to kind of develop, but also there's a connection because there's a sharing of experience. And I found that has been quite a good opportunity to begin to reflect on stuff that's kind of part of this, but bigger than this as well.
Yeah, so that's really great, Siobhan. And so what have you been doing for the action bit, so the clang of the action?
I think it's keeping active. I need to keep active because I've got a number of issues with my joints. I've been lucky enough to continue to work. My daughter isn't going to school, so there isn't the mad rush in the morning, but that has its other downsides in time at home. But what I plan to do, because I'm avoiding using the underground, so I'll get the train to Waterloo and I walk all the way along the river. Now it's about an hour's walk, but it's actually beautiful. And I was sort of thinking if any of you guys, now that we can actually technically take more than one walk a day, just try walking. It's really easy. You might even find you might not manage more of a 10-minute walk, but if you get a chance of going out your house different routes and building up, there's something quite nice about just having a walk. And there are less people out there, so if you feel anxious being around loud noises or lots of bustling people, this is actually a really good time to just begin to sort of get to know the city a bit better. I found it really quite nice and interesting. It's just so much quieter. And how about yourself?
So what I've been doing for action in my life has been Well, when things were as they were, I was walking into work and walking back, so that was an hour's walk a day. So now I don't have that. I've got a treadmill at home, and I've started using it, so I'm making a regular habit of doing 20-minute sort of jog every day. And that's made me feel really good, actually. And initially it was quite difficult to get on it, and once I'd gone past the 1 week of doing it, it got easier. And then I had a cold, and it became difficult again, and I thought I don't want to go back to square one where it was really tough. So I just sort of did a sort of a faster walk on it, so just keep it going. And then I've always had a sort of a yoga practice that I do, which is sort of 40 minutes. So I've been continuing to do that. So it's sort of having the fast pace of the running and the slow pace of the yoga, but introducing more sort of breathing as well. Because before I was sort of really doing it for strength, for muscle strength, and balances, but now I'm sort of using it more for sort of mindfulness, where I'm sort of breathing and making sure that my body and mind connection, so my autonomic nervous system is calmed down, because I think with COVID and everything, and relationships, as you know, you can be on high alert, on threat mode all the time. So it's just sort of making sure that I'm, because sometimes you don't even realise that you're sort of on guard. What's happening next, and watching. And I think I went through the phase of watching a lot of news, and then just seeing constant figures of the amounts of deaths, and just seeing it in numbers was just really very shocking. And then how it was portrayed as well, it was just a bit terrifying. And so I think I've sort of been on very driven to get through and keep busy and active. So I think it's quite useful for me to actually realise how I'm processing things. So the breathing has made me sort of a bit more aware of how I'm processing in my body, and just calming my nervous system. And so then able to be there for other people as well as myself.
That's really important. And maybe you can put a little tip back on a yoga thing for everyone as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And what have you been doing around the idea of noticing?
Well, my daughter's been keen for a few years to have a cat. And just at the start of everything, a kitten was born with our name on it. So we've just been sort of tracking his progress to almost coming up to 2 months. So that has been the thing that we've been noticing. And also we planted lots of seeds, different plants, in just cereal cartons, and radish and pumpkin and beans, and the beans are really huge now. So I'm just sort of go in the morning after breakfast, I spray the plants and just sort of notice them and say hello.
Like Prince Charles.
So just noticing new life, really. So it's been quite a good thing. And I suppose rather than sort of fixate, I suppose you can sort of start fixating on yourself, and think, oh, I'm not working hard enough, or I need to improve this, I need to do this, and some of the lists of things, like learn 2 new skills, there's a whole sort of host of things that you could be doing, but it's just a bit more of a gentle thing, because I know if I start scrutinizing myself, I will find fault, and then I'll be wanting to fix that. But it's rather than looking at me, I sort of look at new life.
That's a really nice way. That's observing. There's quite a few people have even just sort of said that sitting and looking at the window at the season changing, which seems like quite a small thing to do, but it is almost meditative, you know, because things are slowing down. And as you said at the beginning, there was almost this big panic thing. You've got to keep everyone occupied and be doing all this stuff and redecorating your house and sorting everything out and learning, you know, Japanese. And then there was a bit of a backlash. I don't know if any of you guys are on social media. You know, people actually realised that actually it was making them feel worse because it's exhausting. Like the initial change was so much to get everyone's head around. It was really tiring. A lot of people said they weren't sleeping very well, or they were having funny dreams, or you know, you've got money worries. You know, you're worrying about your own health and other people's health. So, you know, it just actually is just a time to slow down, as you say. Maybe notice things. Gardening is a great thing. And if you can't access that, one of the things that I have found quite useful for me, and it's a method that I've learned through having sort of different interventions around pain management and stuff, is something called somatic experiencing, and it's something anybody can do. And you can do it whilst you're walking, or just sitting, or before you get out of bed, or before you go to bed. And it's just noticing how your body feels in a very unjudgmental way. And if you feel any tension anywhere, you just observe it. You just literally observe it. Sometimes it can feel quite bizarre because once you notice it, it can get quite strong. But if you're able to sort of tolerate the observation, it kind of integrates. It's something that almost just wanted to be witnessed, for a better use of word. And you might find yourself releasing, and you mentioned the word autonomic nervous system. And that's basically, you know, all the information that comes through our whole body, that connects through the brain to our senses, to our stomach, to our breathing, our heart, how they all interrelate. And when you begin to engage with that, sometimes you release a yawn, or you find yourself breathing more deeply. And that's just a way of, you've actually processed something. I find that useful. We might even do maybe a little something on it if you're interested. One of the things that I would suggest with that is, if anything feels too much, orientate yourself back round to the room, feel what you're sitting on, name a couple of things you can see, name a scent, because sometimes it can be quite intense, and if it isn't something you've done before, it might bring up something that probably could do with, you know, one of us, somebody just holding it with you, as opposed to you having to process that all by yourself. But that's something I use, and you know, it's been quite tricky with my daughter being at home, because you don't get that quiet moment. But we could, you know, if you're interested, let us know, and we can do some very simple stuff.
There's an acronym as well called SOBER, which is the stop, observe, breathe, expand, and relax. So if you sort of think of that when you need it, so it's just SOBER: stop, observe, breathe, expand, relax, and then react.
Yeah, that's another thing. And we got to our last idea, giving.
Yeah.
What have you been giving?
I've been giving off myself. I've been sort of I find resources very easily, so I've been using sort of resources to send out to as a mailing list, and putting together sort of images that might be relaxing, and sort of being creative around that. So giving resources and links and ideas and thoughts, and just sort of a way of opening a dialogue. You know, you know, you can sort of just say, "How are you?" But it's just another way of saying, "How are you?" and here's something that might help. And it just continues the relationship, but in a more of a distant way. So I think that's the way that seems to have been automatic with me, is to respond in that way. How about you, yourself?
Yes, I mean, this is an interesting one. We talked about it whilst we were sort of preparing this session, and you know, it kind of, an interesting thing for me, and I'm quite happy to sort of share this. It was almost like a bit of, and I didn't realise at the beginning when the whole COVID sort of, the new normal occurred, that actually my giving thing could actually be a trauma response. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Sometimes you might find yourself rushing around doing something or shutting down or feeling very angry, and then it's actually something to do with maybe something, a thing that's kind of reminds us of something that at some point impacted our lives. And I found I sort of got myself a bit exhausted making sure I was giving, making sure I had everything ready in the house for people, getting myself on mutual aid things. And maybe that's one of those sort of survival mechanisms that maybe if you felt at some point in your life, whether it was a peer group or a family member, you had to do something in order to make yourself safe. So for me, giving is quite an interesting thing. Sometimes I have to be careful not to exhaust myself, to do too much, and to make sure that there's something of a shared. But what I would recommend people, if you're because there is something, if we're talking about routine, to find you've actually got to get up and you've got something to do, somewhere to be, someone to help, because the mutual aid groups and Town Hamlets have, I mean, you might have a letter, everybody would have got a letter about how it's divvied through the wards. You can put your name on the website, and you can either, if you need anything and you can't get out, people will come and deliver it to you, or if you if a neighbour near you or somebody, because they contact you that way, requires something, you can offer to go and get it for them. So in terms of routine, that's amazing. You know, and sometimes there's people who just, there's a mutual chat, people would sort of phone up and see if everyone's okay. So that is a really good thing. But that's maybe another thing with routine is, don't worry if you're finding it really difficult, because these circumstances can bring up stuff that we may not even have an awareness of. So if you're finding yourself exhausted, be a bit compassionate with yourself and say, okay, maybe there's things going on here that might be a little bit bigger than me and out of my control, and please let us know, because we do actually have so many resources here and so many different ways we can sort of think through these unusual times, and we could even from your feedback we can create a course that is meaningful to what you're experiencing.
Yeah, and so another way is to, because we're social interaction beings and all of that, and we're social comparison beings, so not to get into that compare and despair that maybe someone's giving more or doing more, and we see loads of images on the news of people who are out doing, doing so much, and then you might sort of feel, am I doing enough? But it's just, what you have done is enough, and it's just sort of realising that that's fine, that taking care of you is the most important thing.
That's a really good point, because I've actually heard that comment on a few disability chats as well, that people actually almost having, it's almost like a guilt response, because they feel they can't do enough. You feel kind of suspended. So that's a really good thing you've brought up here. So although we're talking about routine, I guess we want to expand it to something a bit bigger, more as a way of providing some care for yourself.
So we've really enjoyed talking through our clang, and so if you wanted to have a go at home, just sort of put the word there, and then look at connection, learning, action, noticing and giving, and then just put whatever comes to mind, and maybe it might give you a fresh approach to what you could do to break a routine or start a new habit. Okay, thank you so much for being with us in this way. And it'd be great to get your feedback. And so we'll have a feedback form at the end of where the video is. And also, if you wanted to have a sort of a one-to-one Zoom meeting with me or Siobhan, that would be great as well. And then we can sort of discuss through any ideas and thoughts that have come up for you, any ideas for future courses. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks again also for me for everyone who's joined the course today. And just to give you a little bit of something that you can sort of take home, obviously we're talking about routine and connection is one of the biggest things. I'm going to pop some links in the box below, specifically around the Hearing Voices Network, Drop the Disorder and the National Network of Survivors. All of those groups are doing Zoom meetings, they're doing poetry nights, they're doing music nights. So it could be a really good place to kind of actually share your stories and listen to other people's stories. And if you have any resources that you think is really useful, if you can also then you could share them with us and we could exchange ideas with all the other students. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you on some future groups.
So,
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching, and goodbye.
Bye, see you soon.